So now I want us to work on this page. So this is one of the most important one where we process the payment with Stripe. And if I come to Stripe documentation, I'm at Stripe stroke docs and come to payments, you can see here we have getting started, we have quick start, and we have build a payment integration. So actually everything is usually at the docs, okay? And I'll just give you a nice guide. So we want to have a form like this where we can actually process payment using it. And if I scroll down, you'll see the process is to set up Stripe. So we had already installed Stripe. To create a payment intent, so we already created the payment intent, so we worked on that API. Very nice. So we come down, we did something like this: await stripe.paymentintents.create. We specified the amount and currency. I think we retrieved the client secret, so we added the client secret to our local storage. Very nice. We already did that. So if I come here, go to the local storage, go to application, then book room state, we already have the client secret right there. We have the payment intent ID. So we have already gone through all these steps right there. Now the next step is to collect the payment details. So in this case, we make use of React Stripe.js and also Stripe.js, and this will provide us with the payment forms. Okay, so the first thing is to install these two, React Stripe.js and Stripe.js. So I'll copy that command. You can just type it out at Stripe then stroke that, at Stripe stroke that, but for me I just wanna paste it. So I'll come right here. Let me stop our, or we can make it to still run and open a new terminal. The good thing right here, you can have as many terminals as you want. So I'll go ahead and install those two. Okay, then let's see what we need to do. So we will load Stripe by using the public key, and we get a Stripe promise. Then we will have these elements component from React Stripe. Then we will include them right here. We will customize the appearance of our Stripe form, and here we will pass a checkout form. I think this is the checkout form where we get the payment element and we create our form with a submit button. So it's pretty easy, actually, very straightforward, but we might need to customize some stuff and so on. I'll just close everything else. So I'll close all. Then I go to app, then book room, and we had created this component. Okay, so for this book room, this is the server component. We can create an alternative for it. So at component, let us create a new folder called booking, and inside booking I'll add a new file, and I'll say book room client dot tsx, just like that. Stateless functional component here, and this will be book room client. I go ahead and say div. Okay, very nice. And we bring it in right here. Right here I can add a class name, and I'll just say padding of 8, and I save. Now we will not be coming back to this one, so I close it completely, and we'll now focus on book room client right here. So since this is the client component and we'll be having some hooks or on-click events, we can mark this as use client. Now the first thing is to load the Stripe promise. So if I come here, you see we do this const Stripe promise is equals to load Stripe, and we pass the public key. Outside our component const Stripe promise will be equal to, we call load Stripe, we invoke it. So this load Stripe will come from Stripe.js. Let's import it. Right here I'll say import, we invoke right here load Stripe from at Stripe.js, and we'll say process.env, and then dot. We go to our .env file, we copy this. Next, public Stripe publishable key, and we paste that right here, and right here I'll say as a string, just like that. And you can see now we have our Stripe promise. Very nice. So if we check the docs, we will use this Stripe promise at our return. So before we get to showing our element component, we'll come right here. Let's add a class name to this one. Let's have a max width for this one, 700 px. And then right here, I'll say mx to be auto. I'll have a h3, and right here, we'll have a class name, and I'll say text to be 2XL, then font to be semi-bold. I come right here and I'll have another class name, and I'll say margin to the bottom of 6. Before we show anything, we will check if we have the client secret and if we have the booking room data. And if we don't have those, we will not show this form. Okay, so right here we should be able to retrieve them from our global state, from our hook. So right here I'll say const, we destructure something from the use book room hook. So here we get the booking room data and the client secret. Okay, now with these two we will perform a check right here. So I'll use this and I'll say, do we have the client secret, and do we have the booking room data? And if we do, that is the only point that we will show this particular content. So right here I'll say a div and I enter, then I'll pass this heading right there. I save. We should have just done right here like MB, then 6, then we remove this div and just have our clean heading right there. So where we should be having that div is down here, where I will say a div. Here we will show the room that we are trying to book. So basically we will just show the room card component, and all we need to do is to pass the room data. So right here I'll say room will be booking room data dot room. Then we import this component from room card. So we'll show the details of the room that we are trying to book. Okay, very nice. And we can add some spacing now right here by saying a class name, and we'll add margin to the bottom of 6. So let's import the elements from Stripe. Right here I'll say import, and I'll invoke, I'll say elements from, and right here I'll say at Stripe React.js. So I can put it right there. We'll say elements. We will pass several stuff. The first one is Stripe, and we'll set that to our Stripe promise, this one that we just created here. So you can copy that one, include it in here. And another thing that we can pass is the options, where we can customize the theme. So right now, if I happen to save and we come back, it's refreshing. Once it refresh, look, we can see the room that we are trying to book. Now we should not be having delete and update room right here. We can come back to the room card and perform some conditional rendering. Hit Control and click on this one. Okay, it opened the room card component. Here we had this check is hotel detail page. So it's not a check like a variable, but we'll create another one is book room. Are we in that book room page? We can use path name and dot includes here. We invoke it and we say book hyphen room. So we can use this to conditionally render those buttons at the very bottom. So if we are not on that page, we will basically not show the footer. So right here we will say if we are not on is book room, that is when we will show this card footer. So I click there, shift, click here, cut, come back and paste there. And I remove this spacing and I save. So therefore, at our book room page, we will not be having that footer. So if I come, you see it is gone. So here we should be including a form. So if we come back to Stripe docs, you'll see we pass checkout form, and that checkout form looks like this. So we will create a new component inside booking. I'll create a new one, and I'll say this is the room payment form.tsx. Inside these particular components, the trace functional component, I save, and right here we will pass that room payment form. So here we'll say room payment form, and we will define some states here. The first one is payment success. So once we complete the payment, we'll be having this payment success. Then I'll have another one, const page loaded, and right here we'll have set page loaded is equals to use state, and I'll invoke that and I'll say false. Now right here we can also set the options. So right here I'll say const, and we'll say options full colon, we'll add a type to be of type stripe, element options. So we bring in that type from stripe like that, and we set this to be equal to here we will pass the client secret like that, and the second thing we'll pass appearance, and I'll say full colon. Right here we'll say the theme. Here we'll perform a check, so we can get our own theme from the next theme. So we'll say const theme is equals to, we make use of use theme hook, which will come from next theme. So this will tell us whether we are in a light theme, dark theme, or whether we are in the system theme. So here we'll perform a check of this theme, and we'll say if theme is equal to dark, so here I'll say dark, that is when we will show the night theme. So Stripe calls their theme night theme, else we'll just show the Stripe theme. The problem with system, we don't know whether it's dark or light, so we'll do it like that for dark. And here I'll say labels, and I'll say full colon, I'll say floating. Now these options will pass it to our elements component right here. So right here I'll say options will be equal to options. I'll create a function that updates these payment success. So right here I'll say const, and here we will set the payment success. We invoke it and we pass the value. The value we will receive it right here as a boolean. For this room payment form, we will be passing two plops. One is the client secret. Another thing that we will have is that function handle set payment success, and we'll pass it as handle set payment success. So I save that file now, and I come to this one, and we should include the types for those two plops. So here we will receive the client secret, and we will receive the handle payment success function, and right here we can type them directly as our room payment form props. We'll also be receiving the booking room data. So right here I'll say const booking room data, and I'll have the reset book room. So once we complete payment, we will reset our state. Here we'll have the use book room hook from our use book room hook. We will initialize stripe, and I'll say const stripe will be equal to, we have a hook called use stripe from React stripe. So I initialize that like that. Then right here I'll have const elements to be equal to use elements, again from our React stripe JS, and we invoke it like that. Here we'll have more state. We'll have the loading state, so I'll say is loading, and we'll use this when submitting the form for payment. Set is loading. We'll say use state, and we set the initial one to be false. Okay, then we'll also have a toast, so let's bring it right now just like this to be equal to use toast from UI use toast, we invoke that one. Now right here, even before we do anything, we will call use effect. So this will be called the very first time our page loads, and right here we will call it again whenever the value of stripe changes, this value here. So in here we will perform a check. If we don't have a stripe, we will immediately return. We will say if we don't have the client secret, we will immediately return. If we don't have the client secret, we'll set handle set payment success as false, and right here we'll set is loading to false. Now let's come to this div here, and this will actually not be a div, but it will be a form. So I'll say form like that. This is the HTML form. We are not importing it from anywhere. What is wrong with this form? Yeah, there we go. And this form have the on submit event handler, and here we'll be passing a function to submit the form. So we will be working on this function later on. So handle submit right here. Let us set it up as an empty function like that, so that we can just pass it here as handle submit. So whenever we submit the form, this function is the one that we run. You can add an ID, and I can say that this is the payment hyphen form. I don't think it really have an effect, but we'll just add it anyways. So right here I'll add a h2. Let us have the billing address. Here we can pass a class name, and right here I'll say font to be semi-bold, margin to the bottom of 2, and text to be large. I'll pass a component which is address element, which we'll get from Stripe. So if I come to the top, this we get from React Stripe.js. It expects us to pass an options prop, and in this options prop I'll say mode is billing. Actually we should pass an object like this and another object in here, and that is where we should be calling these two. So that is why I'm not getting some nice suggestions while typing these out. So here if I start typing allowed countries, you'll see it shows our suggestions there. So here you can include all the countries, or you can specify the specific country which you allow, like collection of the address and payment and so on. So here I'll include an array US and KE. You can use like the code for your own country, or you can check the Stripe documentation on all the other countries and how to allow them. And look, we now have some form to enter the billing address. Very nice. And this is provided by Stripe, and for the country or region we only get 2 because that is what we specify. I wonder if we can allow all of them. What if we omit it? What will happen? Do we get all the countries? Yeah, so you can omit it to include all the countries like that. Okay, now the next one is the payment form. I can have a heading like this one, so I'll copy that one and I'll paste it here. We will say payment information. Here I'll also include a margin to the top of 4. I'll now include the payment element component. We will have an options, and I'll say layout to be tabs. So if I save, now we'll have a field where you can actually enter payment information. And let's wait for it, and look, we have payment information, and it's showing the card here, expiration and CVC. So this is coming along well. So here we will show this div, and we'll say flex hyphen column, and I'll have a gap of 1. And then in here I'll show a separator component. So I'll say separator. From UI separator I'll show another div. Inside this div I can add a style like this, and we'll start by showing a h2. Here we'll have a class name, and we'll say font to be semi-bold, and right here I'll say MB to be 1, and text to be large. I can have a div. Right here we will show a date at 5 p.m. so start date. This is not there yet, but we will add it. I'll duplicate that line and we'll say you will check out on we include, and we will check if this person will be served breakfast. If that exists, we'll show a div. Now after this we'll have a separator here, so we say separator UI. We will be having another div now, and here we'll show the total price. I use the money sign, and right here we will say booking room data dot total price. We will perform a check here to see if we had breakfast. So here we will perform a check and we'll say if it's there, we will show a div. We will say breakfast price, then I'll say booking room data dot breakfast price. Now I think right here we can add a class name, and we add some margin to the bottom of about 2. Now for this start date and end date, we will format them, and I think we can use moment and PMI moment. I'll go to the very top and I'll say import moment from. We come right here before our return statement, and we'll say const start date will be equal to, we call our moment, we invoke it, and we pass our booking room data dot start date, and right here we say dot format, we invoke it, and right here say we duplicate that one. Then here we will have end date, then here we'll have end date. We'll say if we don't have start date, or if we don't have end date. Bookings are also called reservations, so if you see I say reservation, it's also like a booking. So that will make sure that we always have these before we even show anything right here. So these and these, the error disappeared. We save. We have this room that we are trying to book. We have the billing address, the payment address, and we have the booking summary right here. We can say when we are supposed to check in, check out, and we have the total price and breakfast price, but it does not show the price. So you said booking data dot breakfast included booking room data dot room dot breakfast price. So that will show the price for breakfast, and here we'll see the total price. Now the next step is to actually process the payment. After all these divs, actually just before our form, we'll be having a button. We'll say this button will be disabled. Actually, let's bring it in from UI button. So we'll say it's disabled right here if is loading. Then right here we'll say is loading, and we'll say processing payment. Then at the end here we'll say pay now dot dot dot. It is of type submit, so when you click it will automatically submit the form by calling handle submit. This will be an async function. Okay, then here we will be having an event of react dot form event. Then here e.prevent default, and right here we set is loading to true. Now down here we'll check if we have stripe. So if we don't have stripe, or if we don't have the elements, or if we don't have the booking room data, we will immediately return. So right here we should say or. Here we'll have a try and catch block, and if we have an error, we can just log the error to the console, and right here we'll go ahead and we'll set is loading to false. Here later on we'll be checking if we have date overlap. So this is how we process the payment. We call stripe dot, and it have a method called confirm payment. We will invoke it, we will pass an object, we will pass the elements, and then comma, and we'll say redirect if required. Now right here at the end we'll say dot then, and this will give us a result inside this arrow function. So we pass that arrow function, and right here we will get the result of the payment. So the payment might be successful, it might have failed, we don't know, but we will know if we've performed a simple check right here. So we'll say if we don't have the result dot error. If we don't have that, that means that the payment was successful and we can do something right here. So what we do is to update the data that we have in our database. We mark the payment as paid. Okay, we change the payment status. So here we'll make a request using Axios to stroke API, then stroke booking, then here stroke, and we specify the ID. So we will be making use of payment intent. So right here I'll say result dot payment intent dot ID. Okay, so we'll make a request to this API endpoint with that particular ID, and then dot then here again. Here we'll get now a response from our own backend, and then we'll do something in here. Stroke API. We don't have any booking API here, so we can simply create that API by saying here booking. We will add a new folder. Here we will say ID. So we will receive an ID which will be the payment intent ID, and right here I add a new file now, and I'll say route.ts. Okay, very nice. So right here we need to do two things: to delete a booking and also to update a booking. So if I go to room, then room ID, and come to this one here, you will notice that here we had delete and here we had patch. Both were deleting and updating. So we'll create similar functions. So I'll copy that and I'll come to our route here and I'll paste here. So we will just customize very quick. Okay, so here we get patch, we'll get a request, we'll have params. Here instead of room ID we will get an ID of type string. Here we get the body from request JSON. Only that right here we will not be passing the body. Remove that. We get the user ID from auth. Here we check for params ID. Here this will be payment intent ID required. ID is required, the status of that, and right here we'll have this one, user ID. Okay, very nice. Now we come down here. Here we will have a booking. We await prisma.booking, and we will update where payment intent ID is params.id. So this is not ID, but we'll update this by using the payment intent ID. The data here, we will pass an object, and we will say now the payment status. If we make a call to this one, we'll be updating the payment status to true, okay, in our own database. And then right here we can go ahead and we return a booking. Very nice. Now right here console.log error at booking, and then here ID patch, then we show the error, then we throw the error. So that is our update function. For delete function, later on when we like implement delete, we'll be having this function, and we'll have a request. This is just a placeholder, we don't need it, but we'll need to have these params. Then here we will get the ID, here we will get the ID, And now here we'll say booking ID is required. We will say prismadb dot booking, and here we will say booking, then where params dot id. We have a next response, and here I'll have booking. This is booking id. Very nice. So we have created those functions real quick by just editing the previous one, which is real good. So now right here we will make a request to this using the payment intent ID that we get, and then we'll do something right here. We can toast a success. Now once we get to this point, we will call router.refresh. Router.refresh, we don't have the router, define it, so we'll say const router will be equal to use router, and we invoke it. So I am sure that I imported use router from the wrong place, so make sure that it comes from next navigation. We reset our book room data, so this will clear our local storage and state. We will now call handle set payment success as true. So here set is loading to false, so we'll have a catch and we'll have the error, and right here we can log the error. Anyway, here we get an error, we can log it console and do this. This is like an arrow function in there. After the toast, we can say set is loading to false. Another thing here, we said if we don't have an error, so we can have an else statement here. So else, and we'll set is loading to false. Basically, stripe.confirm payment, we pass the elements like that, and that will process the payment. We get a result. If we don't have an error, we update our own database details, and we get all this state handled, else we show an error. So that is what is happening there. Now there is one thing, this is not usually recommended because when we call this, the payment might process as at Stripe, and if the client leaves that page, this might not go ahead to updating our own database, okay, which could be an issue. So the payment will be success at Stripe and not in our own database. So they recommend making use of webhooks, and webhooks is another route of going about this. If you want to learn about webhooks, I have some videos on the channel where we work on e-commerce app and we process payment with webhooks. Also, you can tell them to stay on this page until payment completes. Okay, so right here you can add a retro message. So you'll say if it's loading, you can like tell them payment processing, please stay on this page as we process your payment. So you can give them a nice like message right there. You can use the alert that we used when we were creating a hotel. Actually, we can copy and paste it here. It will be very nice. So you can go to components, then hotel, then add hotel form, and you look for the alert something. It should be at the bottom here somewhere. When you click here, use Control F, say alert, then scroll at the very bottom and it will quickly highlight it for you. So we used it here. Okay, so you can copy this alert and you can use it here. Payment processing right here, and we'll tell them to stay on the page as we process their payment, because if they happen to leave, our own database might not complete processing, and therefore we'll have one side is paid, the other side is not paid. And that is why Stripe recommends making use of the webhooks. So you can include these, and also you can add the webhooks to make sure that that will update well, and also for sending emails when payment is success and so on. So there are many stuff that you can do after this, like sending the email for a successful payment, and even notifications and so on. So this will be good enough for this case and I won't work on it further apart from that. So at this point we can test it and see if it will actually pay. We have this, we want to pay for it using Stripe. At Stripe we should be paying for 420. So if we come here and we refresh, we should see this, it updated to 420. So you can see 420, it's incomplete. So fingers crossed, when we process payment it works. I include the billing address and so on. Then right here we include the card. So we have this test card which you can use 4242424242. So here 444 444, any future date and any CVC. So right here we click on pay now. You see payment processing. Please stay on this page as we process your payment. Processing payment, and we wait. So it's doing two things, it's paying to Stripe and it's updating our database. Let's see if we get any error. Rook, room reserved. The payment was successful and we don't see anything here now since we cleared our state. We cleared the booking room data, we cleared everything. And if we go to application right here and you go to your local storage, you'll see the state here. The booking room data is null, payment intent is null. We don't even have the client secret, so everything is null there. And if we come here, we refresh our Stripe, you'll see now these are succeeded with this card and this is now actually paid. If you go to Prisma Studio and we refresh the bookings, we should have at least one booking whose payment status is paid because we made that call to the Axios where we updated our booking. So we had two bookings. Let's navigate to the payment status and look, this one is paid, the one that have a price of 420. This one is paid, this one is not paid. And once we pay, we say that we have reserved that room, else we will not reserve the room. So right here, if we have the payment success state, we can say if we can return right here, and we will return a div instead of seeing a blank page. We see that, and then right here we can have a button, and right here I'll say view bookings. I'll say on click we pass an arrow function here, and we will have a router, which I think it's not defined. We can easily define it here. So const router to be equal to use router. Make sure you use this from Next navigation and you invoke that. And right here now we'll say router.push, and we can push the user to stroke my hyphen bookings. Just like that. Let's import this button from UI button, and we can add some styles for this to show a success. So I can say class name, and I'll say text hyphen till hyphen 500, and let the text to be at the center. For this one, let's have a class name, and we'll say flex and items hyphen center flex call, and we'll give a gap of 4. So for successful payment, this is what we will see, and we can verify that by saying if not paid. So we'll see it without performing a payment. So this is what we'll see when we have a successful payment. Payment success and view booking. Right here we can say if we don't have the booking room data, or if we don't have the client secret, we can immediately return. Okay, we'll add something else, it will overlap with this one. So we can say also if we don't have payment success. So if we don't have payment success, and can we group these two? Yeah, and this. So we return a div, and for this div we will have the same styles as this: flex item center gap of 4, flex call. Then in here we'll say div, we can show some buttons. So here I'll say this will take us home. Go home. So here I'll add a class name and we'll say flex, then items will be at the center, and then I'll say gap of 4. If we check right here, we say oops, this page could not be properly loaded. Go home, view bookings. So you can add even more styles right here. You can say variant will be outline. Then you can add some styles to this div to look scary. For example, we can add a class name and we'll say text is rows 500, just like that, and I save. Now I'll check, and this will be having the error. So yeah, instead of seeing a blank page, then we can have that. Pretty nice. Components, room card, and I'll add a check now here where we said disabled dates. Okay, so here we will only reserve only if our booking dot payment status is true. So only when it's true is when we will reserve. But again, we can have overlaps once we do this, and that is why in the next episode we'll go back to room payment form, and before we process the payment, we will check for any dates overlaps and will not allow the processing of the payment. Otherwise, that was a nice progress, and I'll see you in the next one.